Today's webinar is going to talk about meal accountability. Does the students, as they're coming through the line, have a reimbursable meal? One of the terms we're going to use a lot through this webinar is called point of service. Abbreviation for that is POS, and I'll probably be using that most of the time when we talk about this. So the person at POS, the person at the end of the serving line, is going to ask and have to be able to know, does the student have the components or items required to meet a reimbursable meal? Can the individual checking off the names at the end of POS make that determination that the students have a reimbursable meal? Just going to briefly talk about offer versus serve. That's a more in-depth separate training. I just want to touch on it. Remembering that there are a certain number of required food items components that must be offered. However, the person doing POS, what must be on the tray for breakfast and what must be on the tray for lunch? They need to know what that is so they can make that determination. You have to have reimbursable meal signage at the beginning of the line. So this is a sample signage for lunch. It says they have to choose 3 or more food groups. It shows you the 5 food groups that they have to be offered. They have to pick at least a half a cup fruit and or vegetable. It can be a combination, but there must be a half a cup on every tray of fruit or vegetable. You've also had another training on the meal pattern. I'm just going to go over it very briefly, a little reminder. Breakfast items are milk, grain, and fruit or vegetable. Breakfast, they have to have 3 items on their tray. One of those items must be a half a cup fruit or vegetable. That is the only requirement on the tray. Milk is not a requirement for a reimbursable meal. It must be offered. It is not required to be on the tray. Meal components for lunch: milk, grain, fruit, vegetable, meat alternate, which is the protein source. Lunch, they must have 3 components on the tray. One of those components must be a half a cup fruit or vegetable. So in the picture you see, you have a half a cup of fruit, you've got a cheeseburger on a bun. So they would come through with this depending on the size of the cheeseburger and the bun, and they would have 3 components. So the students would have a reimbursable meal. Overt identification. Can someone watching at the point of service determine the eligibility of the student? Can someone watching you do what you do make a decision that a child coming through your line is either free or reduced or paid? If you use a paper checklist, you can use a code. You cannot put F, R, or P on that checklist. You don't want them to be able to see the screen, because if they look at it, they might be able to determine, you press the button, they're not charged for a meal, they must be free. You cannot ask the student what their eligibility status is. If they come up to you and say, I'm free, that's different. You cannot ask them what their eligibility status is. There are various types of POS. There's electronic, which is becoming more and more prevalent. Electronic is good because you can print out reports that will help you at the end of the month and at the end of every day. Paper checklist has to be coded, as I mentioned previously. You cannot use the initials F, R, or P, because that's a definite indication of the student's eligibility. You can use ABC, XYZ, 1, 2, 3, £, colon, asterisk, but you can't use these. If you're using tickets, they're numbered tickets. They're not color-coded tickets. There's numbers on the tickets, and maybe the first numbers are 1, 2, or 3, and that's an indication of their status. Color-coded tickets are easier to figure out who's free and reduced and paid. Some districts use ID cards. The student swipes the card. The student hands the POS individual their card, and then it's later entered into a computer system. Maybe there's some other ones out there. Some schools, it was tried once here in Maine, it didn't work. A biometric thumbprint code. It's an acceptable method if you use it. As mentioned, the most prevalent is the electronic because you can do so much with it. Students come in, they enter their PIN code, the name pops up, the POS individual press the button to say yes or no, or even add a la carte items to it. With the electronic system, you can get monthly reports, cash accountability at the end of the month, at the end of the day. You can get daily a la carte sales information. You can get monthly a la carte sales information. Electronic systems help in many different ways. Now we've got some changes coming this year to accountability and different criteria you're going to have to think about. What if you're not serving your meals in the cafeteria this year? Are you doing meals in the classroom? Are you doing meals in the hallway under grab and go? The kids are coming off the bus, they're coming through the line, they're getting a meal. Who's doing POS? Who's determining that the students have a reimbursable meal? Meals in the classroom, teachers doing the accountability, they're going to have to be trained. Bulk meals going home. You're sending meals home with the kids. Who's doing accountability? Kids come to school in the morning, they have breakfast, they go home before lunch, they're taking their lunch home. 2 different accountabilities. Meals taken home to the families. You're delivering meals to the families. What students live in that household, and are they getting the reimbursable meal? Accountability for that. More information will be coming out about this as we get closer to it. If you have meals not in the cafeteria, make sure all staff serving and conducting accountable meals must be trained on the process. What is a meal? Typically, if you're doing meals not in the cafeteria, the offer versus serve option might go away. If meals are going home in bulk, the offer versus serve option has gone away because you're going to have to send home a complete, full, reimbursable meal. Who took the meal? Who is it for? As I stated, training must be required, and document that training so that we all know that those people have been trained. Any accountability documentation must be kept for 3 years plus the current, but longer if there's an outstanding audit. Meal accountability, if no names are involved, can be thrown in the trash. Paper checklist that has the students' names would have to be shredded, even if it's coded, because a person could look at that and probably eventually fill it out. Anything with a student's name in the child nutrition program, when it's disposed of, must be shredded. I hope this answers questions. If you have questions, please email our office, please call our office, and we will help to get you those answers. Please don't hesitate to ask us. We will help you. If we can't help you right away, we will find the answer. Thank you very much, and have a good day.